Welcome back, everybody, to the Even Your Dynasty show.
We just got breaking news in.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Even Your Dynasty show. On today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about the Giants 40-man, where they stand. We're going to talk about Rule 5 protections, a few players that are eligible for the Rule 5, who we think the Giants are going to ultimately protect. There's a lot of names there that are probably pretty well known amongst Giants fans. So we're going to kind of dive in on that a little bit. To start that off, though, I think we're going to have to go into the Giants 40-man as far as how much room's available there, where we might see them remove a few players to create space, potentially 4 guys they want to protect from the Rule 5 draft. So we're going to kind of dive in on all of that. Before we do that, though, for those of you that do enjoy the content, please do hit that like, hit that subscribe. It helps a lot with channel growth. So really appreciate you guys. Share it with your friends, all that good stuff. And hopefully you all caught our Braxton Roxby interview on Monday. If you did not, make sure you go check it out there. Also on Friday, we're going to have a few or we're going to do our normal live show. We're going to give our predictions on the Giants offseason as far as who they, what moves they might make, who they might acquire. Last year, I don't think I did very well. The year prior, I had a couple that kind of got 1.5 predictions right. So, you never know. It's just a fun exercise we like to do based more on what we think the club will do, not necessarily what we will do. Obviously, we'll probably do something later in the offseason on what we would do if it was up to us, if it was, what a perfect offseason might look like, in our opinion. But starting off with the Giants 40-man, they currently reside at 39 players on their 40-man when you factor guys that became free agents and are no longer on the roster. Guys like Justin Verlander, who's now a free agent. So they're currently at 39. Now, one thing to keep in mind, you cannot have somebody on the 60-day IL during the offseason. So a few of the guys like Eric Miller comes off that list. He should play next season, but like Randy Rodriguez is a good example. He's currently on the 60-day IL. He's not expected to play next season, but that doesn't matter as far as off-season roster goes. He is going to take up a spot until the regular season starts, and then they can, put him on the 60-day IL and free up, so to speak, a 41st spot if you want to count Randy at that point. So they're at 39 as it stands. They do still need to make some decisions on tendering contracts for players that are arbitration eligible. I think they have like 5 days to do that, but I don't remember the exact timeline. In the offseason officially starts tomorrow. So I think they have a few days to make that decision. There's a few kind of obvious non-tender candidates out there. Andrew Kisner's ARB3 eligible. That would save them probably $1.5 to $2 million. JT Brubaker, he's also ARB3 eligible. That'd probably be another $2-ish million. Those are the two big ones I see. You can maybe say Joey LaCasey, but he actually threw the ball really well for them last season. I have a hard time thinking they're going to let him go for, a couple $1 million when, especially given the current state of their bullpen. I have a hard time thinking that he's going to go anywhere. So the Kisner and Brubaker, those are the two that I think are the kind of obvious candidates to clear some space. There's obviously some other players that, ultimately might clear space down the road. Especially looking at guys like Marco Luciano or Luis Matos that are on their last, they're out of minor league options. If they don't make the roster out of spring training, they're going to have to get put on waivers and offered up to other teams. I could easily see them being part of a trade in the offseason. The Giants may try and kick that decision all the way down to spring training. Who knows? But those are a couple other guys that could be, sent off to clear space. So but I think we're looking at the ARB3 guys. Those are the two obvious ones to clear some room. So that could ultimately leave them with three open spots on the 40-man. Now they might not add 3 players. They might add 1, they might add 2, they might not add anybody. You just don't know. But we're going to kind of go through the list and my opinions on who's going to get left off and who's going to get added. Now, one thing with the Rule 5 draft, keep in mind, if a player is selected from the Giants, it does not necessarily mean that guy's gone forever. Whoever takes that guy, they have to remain on the roster for the entirety of next season, on the active 26-man roster for the entirety of next season. If he gets injured, the rules get a little weirder, where he needs like at least 90 days, and then he would have to be on the active roster the following year if he wasn't, but we're not going to go too far down that road. They need to be on the active roster for the entirety of the season. If at any point they get optioned down to the minors, they have to be offered back to the club they were selected from. So, that's how you end up with like guys like Blake Sable a couple of years ago for the Giants, who they acquired via the Rule 5, and they kept him on the active roster the whole season. So that way he was now in their system. They didn't have to offer him up. They were able to put him down in the minors the following year, and he was, they could kind of go back and forth between AAA and San Francisco, and they didn't have to offer him back up to, to his original club. So that is something to keep in mind. So when you're looking at players they should and should not keep, you have to factor in, what's the likelihood, or shouldn't protect, I should say. You have to factor in what's the likelihood that this player is actually going to stick on a major league roster for the entirety of next season. And that's where I leave off a lot of these names. Reggie Crawford, I feel like, is the biggest name that is probably at the most risk, but also at the same time, I don't think any team is going to, with how few of innings that he's thrown, I don't think anybody's going to grab him. And I think the idea of him sticking on a roster all year is going to be pretty tough, especially given his injury history. So I don't think Crawford you're going to end up protecting. I just don't see that one happening. Drelmy Maldonado, he's only been in San Jose. He's not going to get protected. Then you get a couple other guys. RJ Dabovich, he's another bullpen arm that's thrown in AAA. But he rehabbed almost all last year. He made a couple late season appearances. I don't see that one happening. Hunter Bishop, I think ultimately he's going to become a minor league free agent. Once the offseason hits, I don't see the Giants adding him to the 40-man. And then you have a bunch of guys down in AA that I just think they're a bit, it's very unlikely for them to get selected and stick on another team. So they would ultimately get offered back to the Giants. And that's guys like Jack Choate. He's probably the closest of these AA guys. Victor Barracoto, John Bertrand, Averson Arteaga, Diego Velasquez is probably going to be the highest rated prospect. And I just don't see him going and sticking yet. Like he's got some work that he still needs done. So I don't think it's worth it for the Giants to risk eating up a 40-man spot for a guy that's very unlikely to stick with another team for the entirety of the season. So then I have a couple guys that I'm a bit on the fence over, that I could see the team potentially adding, but ultimately I don't think they will, at least in the first situation. The first player is Thomas Gavello. He's going into his age 25 season. He's very versatile. He's played all over the diamond, has played third, short, second, left field, catcher even. Had a really strong showing in Sacramento. He split time between AA and AAA this season. In Sacramento, he hit 262, had an 835 OPS. Showed a lot of promise, and with his versatility, I could see how he'd be a guy that could get selected. But he also carried a 31.6% strikeout rate down in the minors. Ultimately, I don't think he's a guy that, I don't like saying he's not worth protecting, but if another team wants to take him and is going to give him a role all season, I just don't see that role with the Giants. So I think there's more important players to protect for the Giants when you have a limited amount of spots that you could potentially use. And I don't see him as a player that's really a threat to be on a major league roster 100% of the season with the strikeout issues he's currently showing in AAA. So I would not personally do it with Gavello. I could see it, but I am he's closer than the previous list I gave, but I personally would avoid that one. Juan Sanchez is the next guy I'm a bit on the fence over. This one, I actually do feel like it could go 50-50. I could see the team wanting to protect him. And he's coming off Tommy John surgery. He's going into his age 25 season. He's a lefty in the pen. Given the state of the bullpen, I could see this as an option for them. but he didn't pitch at all in 2025. He's made his return here in the Arizona Fall League. He's only pitched in 5 games, thrown 7 innings. He's got a 1.29 ERA with 10 strikeouts and 4 walks. Command, as we saw with Robbie Ray, can always be a little bit spotty for guys when they first return from the Tommy John surgery. It takes a little time for them to come back. Hopefully with a full off season, he gets most of that feel back and he's ready to go next season. But he's got a career thrown almost 60 innings in AAA. So this is somebody with AAA experience. He felt like he was really close to kind of earning his spot on the big league roster last season, prior, or I should say in the 2023 season or 2024 season, I'm sorry, before his elbow injury. So, like I said, that one I think could go 50-50 one way or another, but I would probably lean on the side of no, because the other 2 guys that I'm going to mention are either closer or I think a high enough upside that it's worth it's worth eating up a spot, even if they're not going to make it right away. And now we're going to get a little bit into the guys that I do think that they are going to ultimately add to the 40-man to protect them from the Rule 5 draft. The number one, or the first player I'm going to list is the guy we were just interviewing on Monday. I've kind of said it in the past that he's a slam dunk, in my opinion. That's Braxton Roxby. This is a guy that just pitched, good half of the year at AAA. I think he's going to help the bullpen next season. Maybe not on opening day. It might not be breaking camp with the team. I know he talked about that's kind of his goal. He wants to do what he can to break camp with them. And, I think him and a guy like Trent Harris, I think they're both going to have real shots. But I do think Roxby is going to get added because when you talk about risk of losing a player, he is absolutely a guy that another team could swoop up and keep on their roster for the entire season. He's got that ability and that upside, and with him being so close to the major leagues, it's going to put him at a greater risk than other players. So he's the first guy. A little bit about him: in 2025, he threw 62 innings, 3.63 ERA, 1.15 WHIP. That was between AA and AAA. Struggled a bit in AAA versus AA. He had a 1.2 ERA in AA. That went up to 5.91 in AAA. But he struggled with throwing strikes a little bit when he got to AAA. We talked to him about that. He didn't feel like it was the tighter zone. He just feels, generally speaking, he needs to tighten up his command a little bit, especially at the top of the zone. But did strike out a ton of guys, 11.9 Ks per 9, 391 walks per 9. So that overall was a little elevated, but it was over 5 at AAA. Like that was where most of that was. There was a mid-90s fastball. He gets a lot of run on that fastball, like horizontal run. So almost kind of like a sinker, and he's not as, it's not a crossfire like Ryan Walker, but he has a kind of frisbee-ish slider. He will mix a changeup in, kind of, Walker's more of a 2-pitch guy. Roxby has been mixing in a changeup a little bit, especially on lefties, but has that huge breaking slider and then a fastball, mid-90s fastball that has some solid run to it. I think he's got high leverage upside, but definitely is going to need to cut back the command, kind of like a middle reliever option, maybe as a setup guy down the road. But I think he's a guy that can, potentially help as quick as 2026. He is going into his age 27 season, so he's getting a little bit older, but the team does have him over at the camp in San Francisco. That tells me a lot as far as how they view him. So I do think he is a guy that is the easiest decision. And if they are only going to add one guy, I would say it's going to be him. Now, the second guy that I'm going to throw out there, and this is going to seem a little shocking, I think, to some people, because there's a lot of people that view him as a bust. There's a lot of people that view him as a guy that the team is probably out on. There's a lot of people that might view him as a guy they shouldn't even bother trying to protect, and that's going to be Will Bednar, who's going the former first-round pick, 2021, dealt with a lot of back injuries, a lot of other injuries early on in his pro career. He's 26, going into his age 26 season. But hear me out on Will Bednar, and this is why I think they're going to try and keep him. His pitch mix is truly special when you're talking about closer potential. This is a guy with an elite fastball. It runs 97 to 99. He's talked about how he's gotten close to touching 100. It has 22 inches of induced vertical break, which is extremely good. That's like how a pitch fights gravity. Like the difference in what a hitter sees, it's basically like the effect the spin that he gets on it has on the ball. It's an elite fastball. And then you pair it up with an absolutely nasty slider and a splitter that he has now added. That is really good. This guy has massive closer potential. So the potential that you may be giving up on and you might lose is significant. Then on the other side of this coin, though, big time walk potential, big time command issues, huge command issues that he's going to have to address. He was walking 6.7 hitters per nine during last season. He did cut that back a little bit in the second half. I think he got that under like in the mid fours. He was much better in the second half on his walks. But that's a big problem. But there is some precedent when you talk about a guy like that. You know, there are some closers or late inning relievers around the majors that have a history of those issues. Guys like Munoz in Seattle, Josh Hader had those problems in the minors. Camilo Duvall and Randy Rodriguez for some Giants guys that had those problems. Jeff Hoffman, the closer of the Blue Jays, has had a lot of walk issues. So there are guys that, you know, can figure it out later on and potentially and then reach that potential of being a big time closer or late inning reliever. Now, a couple other things that he does well that, you know, obviously with the stuff comes a lot of strikeouts. He struck out 14.45 hitters per nine. He had 14.45 Ks per nine last season. He also suppresses homers really well, only 0.34 per nine last season. Now, some of that could be assisted by being in a very hitter friendly Eastern League. Maybe, you know, we'll see how it looks when he's in the PCL next season potentially. But I just view the upside as so great as a closer, you know, like his brother, that it's worth keeping him around, because if he can get that command tightened up, if they can work with him this offseason, get that tightened up a bit, that might be your solution at closer, especially with his stuff. And unlike guys like Duvall and really Randy, for the most part, he's not really a two-pitch guy. You know, those guys, it was fastball slider. He has a nasty splitter that he developed at the end of last season. And when you're talking about a guy that has 3 pitches that he can make you swing and miss on, that's pretty significant. And he has been very fastball heavy, but I think the stuff is there. They've developed the stuff, and as Roxby kind of talked about in his interview, you know, early developments a lot of times is developing the stuff. Then later on, it comes, all right, let's command it and pitch sequence and all that. I think they just got to figure out that part of the development for him. And then there was a nugget in that Braxton Roxby interview that he dropped for us at that camp. He is rooming with Will Bednar, who is also at that camp. And I just have a hard time believing that the Giants are bringing him to something like that, where it's a lot of younger players, kind of introducing him to the city, the org, you know, a lot of first-year players with the org. I have a hard time thinking that they're going to bring him over there if they don't have some kind of significant plan for him in the future. So I think he's going to get added. I think he's going to be the sneaky ad that a lot of people overlook. But yeah, he's the guy I've got. So those are my predictions. I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments who you guys think they should add, who you think they ultimately will add, and all that good stuff. So we'll see you guys again on Friday. Go Giants, and we'll catch you next time.